Hello, everyone. My name is Maren Kime, and today we are going to be going over my case study number 4. So before we begin, I wanted to give a general overview of the client's information. Today we are going to be addressing the client as Matt. Matt is 7 years old. His diagnosis is autism spectrum disorder. He received that diagnosis in center through the diagnostician. And the behavior of concern that we are going to be addressing today throughout this presentation is screaming. So operational definition and response class. So the operational definition of screaming is defined as any instance of vocalizations at a volume that is above conversational level for any duration of time. Now that means any volume that again is above that conversational level for any amount of time. That would be considered screaming. In this instance, so we found that the primary function of the screaming behavior was attention. Now the client would typically utilize this behavior in certain like transitional moments where attention necessarily wasn't being received in like large quantities. So examples of this would be the client screams while the RBT or BCBA is setting up materials, or the client screams while the RBT or BCBA is putting items away, or the client is positioning their face directly in front of the RBT's or BCBA's face and yelling. Non-examples would be the client screams because they are hurt, or the client screams because they were startled. So in those instances, it wouldn't be considered the behavior. Those are separate instances that don't directly relate to the behavior. They're not attention-seeking behaviors. They wouldn't be participating in those in order to obtain that attention, but instead for the reasons of being injured or being a bit startled. But again, in those instances where if the behavior technician is starting to set up materials and it's not direct attention being given, non-contingent attention being given to Matt, and Matt would scream, that would be considered an instance of the screaming behavior. So the intervention based on rule governed behavior. So in this instance, we chose to go forward with functional communication training. So functional communication training was chosen in order to provide the client with an appropriate replacement behavior that can be used to obtain attention. So it would still satisfy the original goal of the behavior, but would provide them with a more appropriate way to do so. So in this instance, Matt uses an AAC device. So that is Matt's primary form of communication. So a hello icon is listed on the homepage of Matt's AAC. So Matt was prompted then to use the hello icon, to press the hello icon on their AAC. And in that instance, Matt then would receive attention immediately. So if Matt were to press the hello icon on the AAC in place of the screaming behavior, they would be provided with immediate attention and be provided with positive reinforcement in the form of verbal praise. So a lot of like good jobs, very positive behavior, very positive feedback on the behavior. So in the earlier phases, Matt was prompted in instances just generally where we were maybe going into a transitional period or there was going to be a setup or things like that, with a gestural prompt to press hello, and then he received that reinforcement and that attention that he was seeking through the screaming behavior. So after we went through. Eventually, the gestural prompt, as it was continuously used, was pulled back, and it was expected that Matt would use the hello icon independently in order to receive said attention. So in the instance that Matt did participate in screaming, the behavior would be ignored entirely, and no reinforcement would be provided. He would also be redirected following a time frame in between the screaming. After the screaming had subsided, a 15 to 30-second period in between them, then he was redirected and told to use his AAC. And in that instance, Matt would then be expected to press the hello, and then he would be given that reinforcement and that attention. So the outcomes of this intervention. So this intervention was relatively very quickly successful. So in this instance, as I stated, it was successful. So there was a notable decrease in the screaming behavior. Now, when Matt began being prompted to use the AAC device and was told verbally in those instances to use the AAC, given a verbal prompt and a gestural prompt pointing to the icon, he was then able to gain the understanding of utilizing his AAC device and the hello in order to receive that attention. So, in doing so, he was able to use the replacement behavior. The screaming behavior decreased greatly and relatively quickly, and the replacement behavior was utilized in high rates from the client. So in different instances, even in instances really where we weren't necessarily in a position where Matt previously would have screamed, he was still able to utilize that replacement behavior and receive that attention, and him being able to receive that same outcome without participating in the screaming was extremely positive. So a functional relationship between the dependent and independent variable was displayed. So Matt was able to have a decrease in that behavior and an increase in the replacement behavior, which was indeed a very positive outcome. So in respect to obstacles within this intervention, throughout the intervention, there were really no obstacles that were faced. It ran relatively smoothly the entire way through. In respect to any obstacles that I could kind of address, there really were none. If anything, there was more positive outcomes that came from it. Matt's peer interaction increased. He was able to use that replacement behavior to initiate peer play. He was able to use the hello icon on his AAC to be able to inform us and or peers that he would like to play or like some sort of attention, which wound up being extremely positive. So in respect to obstacles, I have to say that this intervention ran extremely smoothly. And that concludes my case study number 4. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for listening. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.